Well, oh my, lots to unpack when it comes to election results, and what happened, I guess, is the big question. What were the contributing factors to the Liberal win? And although it's a minority, it's a pretty darn strong minority. And with many ballots still to be counted and some ridings still in question, it could end up a majority, but probably a minority, but a pretty strong minority. So what are the takeaways from the evening? Well, there's certainly a lot of them. Obviously, we start with Carney and the win, and the turnaround from where they were in December till now is stunning, quite seriously. And there's a couple of factors, and it's pretty simple math, really. It's Justin Trudeau gone, and with that goes the carbon tax, and Donald Trump and his existential threat to Canada. And those were the two big contributing factors that led to all of this, in my humble opinion. But I think, look, I've got some things that I'm gonna hold off until we get into the call-in segment. Some thoughts that I've got running through my mind. But one of the things that, of course, Pierre Poilievre says he's sticking around, although he lost his seat. I mean, that's embarrassing when you lose your seat like that. And he lost it quite handily. And questions swirling about his leadership, of course. He says he's sticking around. I don't know how he sticks around. I really don't. First of all, he doesn't get a paycheck. From my knowledge, does the party pay him? Because he won't be paid as an MP. Now, Jagmeet Singh and the Liberals decimated to non-party status, and I think rightfully so. I think that there's a lot of reasons why that happened. And look, the Bloc, there's so many things to get to, but I'm going to reserve some of my comments for later in the show. Steve Murphy will join us at about after the 10:30 news, between 10:30 and 11. Lori Turnbull, Dalhousie University political science professor, joins us at about 10:15. And we will be talking as we go along. Vanessa Van Ness, of course, the producer of the show, is working on lining up some guests throughout the show as well. So we're going to take calls for a couple hours, 11 till 1. Get your take on this, and again, get as much reaction as we can from candidates, from winners. And anyway, lots and lots to unpackage. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening, folks. We appreciate it very much. And let's just dive right in and talk to one of the victors, Jessica Fancy-Landry, Liberal MP-elect, South Shore, St. Margarets. Jessica, how's that sound? Pretty good, eh?
Oh, it is sounding great. Long time no talk there, Todd. Thank you.
Well, listen, when you were here in studio, I think it was a week or so ago, or a couple of weeks, I can't remember when you were in here, in all seriousness, I thought to myself, this is somebody who Rick Perkins has got his hands full with this person here, because you really, I think it was well-deserved, I guess, and I don't say that in a partisan way at all. I'd say that in a personal way. I think it was a well-deserved victory. You obviously worked hard.
Thank you so much, Todd. Yeah, my honest to goodness, my team and I, this was the little train that could. And, that's what happens when you have awesome people working with you and you believe in positivity. And we ran a really energetic and clean campaign, which I am completely proud of. Okay.
What are your thoughts, I guess? What was it like to win, I guess? What was that? What did it feel like to win?
Well, that's a loaded question there, Todd.
Yeah.
But honestly, it was a feeling of, okay, girl, you've got this, and what are the next steps? So we're already talking today. I'm running on 2.5 hours worth of sleep.
I'll bet.
Yeah. What are the next steps? Get that constituency office up. Now, when does MP school start?
Yeah.
The timelines, all of it. So, it was a momentous feeling. It was wonderful having my family and, my core support there with me last night. And I could not be more proud of myself, but also, South Shore St. Margaret stepped up, that they want unity, and the community is always something that is at the forefront of everything that I do. And I'm really excited to get working with the community at a bigger level now.
Yeah, for sure. So what's the timeline? When do you get the keys to the constituency office and all that? And when do you head to Ottawa? And what's the timeline?
Yeah, so I've got my office. I made sure I secured that sucker very quickly, so the campaign office will remain my office. So there's that. In terms of timeline, we're already seeing with the minority government, they've got to put together cabinet, and then we will be called to Ottawa. Not quite sure on the timeline on that. As the ink is still very dry. So I can't give you a timeline regarding that right now. I know by the end of the week we will have our whole agenda rolled out.
Okay, Rob mentioned to me via email in my intro, I said Jagmeet Singh and the Liberals got decimated. Obviously, it was a slip of the tongue. Jagmeet Singh and the NDP got decimated. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Rob, for fact-checking me. Anyway, nonetheless, I think, just to keep it real for sure. So what are your plans for the riding? What do you want to, how do you want to represent the riding, I guess?
Well, like I've been saying, my whole campaign, I want to be a true constituency MP, which means when I'm not doing my thing up in Ottawa, fighting and advocating for the good people of South Shore St. Margaret's, I'm here in the community building those connections. I think one of the biggest things that I saw at the doors and on the phones, talking to people at all of my meet and greets, is that, politics are so divisive. And the line drawn in the sand is very deep, and it's time to bring people together and help us, remember just how awesome the communities are along this constituency. So that's what I would say to answer that. I will also say that I am completely excited to be working with my future boss, Prime Minister Mark Carney. I feel like I've always been a fiscally responsible Liberal with a social lens where I'm an educator, and seeing his plan to help jumpstart this economy, but always keeping, humans and people at the center of everything that we do really resonates with my own value system. So I'm really excited to see the work that we can do together. And a lot of really kick-butt people, Todd, got in, and I am so excited to start working with everybody.
All right. Mark Carney says that he's going to work hard at representing the entire country and all constituents, including those who did not support him. I assume that you feel that you'll have the same approach. You want to unify as much as you can the riding?
Completely, yeah. Like I just mentioned, we've got to bring people together. I'm here for everybody in all walks of life. I've built my whole campaign on inclusivity and working with all groups of people. It's so wonderful this morning to be waking up to my email, my candidate email, and seeing community organizations already wanting to book meets and book meetings and getting invited to things. So, that's really where the good work happens. And like I said, it's all walks of life. We know what a lot of the concerns are. People have let me know throughout this whole campaign. And it's time to get to work and listen and learn to constituents and about the constituents, what they need.
Okay, it is a minority government, although a very strong minority government, and that could change with today, as Elections Canada does more work when it comes to counting ballots. But any concerns about the length of how long this government can govern under this minority situation?
Well, I think right now, like we said, we have to wait for some of those recounts in the different pockets nationally. In terms of a minority government, we need to see, what kind of bills are being put on the table and policies put on the table, and how do we come together as a country and work together for Canadians.
Okay, when it comes to, I guess, local issues, fisheries, this is a big issue happening in your area. You know that this has been controversial. Any comments on the fisheries and DFO and that might fall on your plate? What are your thoughts?
No, for sure. Like I've been saying this whole campaign, the Liberals need to build back trust in this area of the province. And I've had already 4 meetings with Ottawa regarding that and already advocating for that. I've had meetings with all sides so far, and it's time to, it's time to get to work. and it's time to repair some of those relationships. It's time to, like Prime Minister Carney said, DFO needs to be closer to the wharf in terms of enforcement and give the people the support and resources that DFO says that they need. And it's time to build back that trust.
Would you turn down a fisheries minister cabinet post? Probably not, eh?
Well, right now, like I said, the ink is still very dry. Right?
Yeah.
And right now, I think the best thing I can do is listen to the fishermen and the fisherwomen from all walks of life and take those concerns and help draw up some action plans.
But I guess what I'm getting at is I think that you'd be well positioned, obviously, geographically and in that riding, and I think that you'd certainly get a consideration. I'm not advocating for you, by the way, but it's just... I think that if I'm Mark Carney and I'm looking at the fisheries portfolio, your name might be on my mind. What are your thoughts?
Well, we'll have to see when the door when the door gets knocked, right? And right now, all I can say is that I am here to work for my constituents first. Yeah. And anything else that pops up is something that I would have to consider first and foremost with my family first. And then with some advisors. So right now I am putting the constituency and the good fine people here at South Shore St. Margaret's first, and then we'll see what happens in the upcoming weeks.
Okay. Congratulations, Jessica. Well fought, well-deserved win, and let's keep in touch.
No, for sure. Anytime, Todd. And I want to thank all of our constituents for South Shore St. Margaret's for, voting for unity and voting for, the adult at the table with Prime Minister Mark Carney. So thank you so much, Todd. Okay. Congratulations. Take care. Jessica Fancy-Landry, Liberal MP-elect, South Shore St. Margaret's. And she took down Rick Perkins. And it should be mentioned, by the way, we offered Rick Perkins an opportunity to come on the show, and he denied. Or didn't respond. Vanessa worked hard. She offered all the Conservatives an opportunity to come on the show, and none of them did, including Mark Boudreau here in Halifax. And so it just goes to show that being transparent and being and taking opportunity to talk to the electorate is important. I'm not saying we're the reason why these Liberals won, but I think it's interesting that Rick Perkins turned down the opportunity to join the show, and he lost. Anyway, look, I'm not cheerleading for anybody when I say that. It's just a point of interest and want you to know that we offer, because Vanessa took calls saying, why are you talking to the Liberals? Well, she reached out to Conservatives, every single one of them, and every candidate for that matter, regardless of political stripe. We had a Libertarian, and we had somebody from the PP, we had Maxime Bernier was in studio here, for goodness sakes. So there you go. Lori Turnbull when we come back. All right. We've got Steve Murphy joining us for, I don't know how long we'll have Steve Murphy for, as long as I'm going to keep him, I think. He's here in studio right now, and I think I'm going to keep him as long as I need to. What do you think, Steve?
I'm just here to drink coffee. You don't play running on empty anymore, but boy,
I know.
I think a lot of us are running on empty.
I know for sure. All right, so we're going to talk to Lori Turnbull in just a couple of minutes. So... My, oh my, lots to unpackage here, and what can you say, right? It's quite a night, and well, I'm just reserving what I'm going to say because I don't want to shoot my cannons too soon. I want to keep my powder dry. What do you think?
Okay, your show.
There you go. All right, Lori Turnbull joins us. Lori Turnbull, Dalhousie University political science professor. Lori, hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm well. You?
I'm kind of a zombie, 2 hours sleep.
Yeah, we're all the same. We're all feeling the same way.
Yeah, I think that's right. So it's all the politicians' fault.
All right, that's right. So I guess broad strokes takeaway to start, Lori.
Well, I mean, honestly, even though there's a big difference in seat count, the Liberals have 24 seats more than the Conservatives at this point. But in terms of the popular vote, it's almost a tie. I think the polls did not account for how well the Conservatives were going to do in Ontario. Mm-hmm. And I admit, it was kind of I think in the last week or so of the campaign, things started to shift where some of that Conservative vote started to shore up. And I think the polls didn't necessarily pick it up in time kind of thing. But I mean, they did really well in Ontario. They did. They managed to pick up a couple of seats in Atlantic Canada. They, the Conservatives and the Liberals basically split BC. So now we have basically what I would call a hung parliament. Poilievre has no seats. NDP lost official party status. It was a consequential night. I'm just not really sure where we go from here.
Yeah, some ridings, like I just had Jessica Fancy-Landry on the show and upset Rick Perkins, and there were some real upsets and some real surprises. Why do you think that is? What happened?
I mean, I think in some ways we start to focus on the popular vote at the national level. We talk about the national competition and the dynamic between Poilievre and Carney, and this is a big focus. And sometimes what's going on under the hood at the riding level sometimes escapes our attention, and then we think, oh, no, look at that, right? Like that guy lost a seat. We didn't see that coming. I mean, Perkins, he was a single term, and so it's not necessarily that he really grabbed hold of the riding at this point. And I think I think the Liberals really targeted some ridings that they were interested to flip, right? Like obviously Poilievre's. Bruce Vanjoy started campaigning there 2 years ago. So he was, that was a long, long project.
And Sean Fraser, I mean, unretiring, unquitting, if you will, and manages to win the seat. That's amazing, isn't it? Really?
Oh yeah, and I mean, it didn't look like it was going to be a sure thing for him all night either.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of speculation, I think, about whether that switch he made would be held against him. Would the voters decide this was not, they weren't sure how committed he was to the riding, that kind of thing. But nope, at the end of the night, he pulled it out. Still a couple of counts going on, though, in like really close riding in Newfoundland. I think they're still counting, that was the peninsulas. It's kind of a newly drawn riding. So that one's still going, I think.
Okay, so how does Carney govern with this? I mean, it's a very, very strong minority. Could be a majority when all is said and done. Could the NDP have 7 seats, although they've been decimated non-party status? But he could find a dance partner there. Jagmeet Singh's no longer at play, so an interim leader might be somebody who Carney could work with. What are your thoughts on the workability of this minority government?
Yeah, I mean, the Liberals are short from a majority by 4 seats at this point. I don't see a majority being formed from what's there now. I think that things will probably stay at a minority status, but they're close. So the 7 seats, if they stay for the NDP, that's more than enough to top the Liberals off, and they can function as a secure minority for a while. I mean, it kind of depends how long the players want to keep this going. The NDP will not want to go to election anytime soon, right? They're in soul-searching mode. They need a new leader. They've lost party status. They're going to lose a lot of resources that were available to them before. This is a major rebuild for them. And so the longer they have to do that, the better. The Bloc does not want to go back to election. The Conservatives are the wild card here, because it's possible that the Conservatives will see this as, hey, we did really well. We almost got there. We did better than the polls said. We just need one more try, and we're going to win the next time. Or are they going to say, we lost a 25-point lead, and Poilievre lost a seat. This is a failure. We need a reset. And then that kind of, like, however they play that strategy will determine when they want to go to an election next, I think. Because some of the things that Carney's going to want to do, like build a pipeline, well, the Bloc's not going to support him on that. And I'm not sure the NDP are either. So it could be some weird stuff where we actually see Liberals and Conservatives cooperate sometimes. But I mean, as soon as I say that, it sounds unlikely, given everything.
Yeah, I heard Francois Legault, though, the Quebec premier, and that they seem to be softening on Energy East. Do you think that there's any light there at all?
I'm not sure. And even if Legault softens on it, doesn't mean Blanchet. Yeah. And so I'm not sure how much, coordination there's going to be on those two sides. But it's possible, especially, again, given, like, everybody's got to look at the alternative of ending up in another election, which I think nobody wants. And so that could bring some people to the negotiating table and, make them sort something out. Blanchet might be willing to cave on it, but I suspect that he'll put something in the window that he wants. And then that's negotiation. That's politics. We'll see how it works.
Why do you think that I mean, as much as the Conservatives pushed the Carneys corrupt and the China connection and the loan that he got from the Chinese bank and moving Brookfield and its tax havens, and why did that not penetrate the electorate, do you think?
Because I think it's those sorts of things directed against Carney. People didn't think that about Carney. It didn't stick to him. The messaging that the Conservatives were putting out, trying to frame him and define who he was, it just didn't resonate with how voters felt about him. To the extent that they knew Mark Carney, they saw this guy who was, here was a banker, here was an economist, a guy who's run economies before. He's got the professional skills and credentials and experience to deal with Trump. He's our best bet. I think people didn't necessarily, they just didn't accept the framing that Conservatives were putting on him. Now, there are some people who are saying, the longer that Carney is exposed politically, the more he will accumulate political baggage. And of course, that happens to everybody. But at this point, he was in the game for such a short period of time. I think the Conservatives just didn't have enough time to make people really start to think that their framing of Carney was accurate.
And Carney's number one attribute, I think, is the fact that he wasn't Justin Trudeau.
Oh, God, yes. Right. And everything, that's another thing. I think the Conservatives undermined their own messaging by trying to push on, like, carbon tax Carney, and he's just like Justin. It's like, no, he's not, actually. Even if you don't like him, I think it would be hard to make an argument that Carney is the same type of political beast as Trudeau. Not at all. And so I think in trying to push that narrative, they just ended up looking insincere, which would have caused voters then to question other framing that they were trying to put on Carney too.
Okay, Poilievre says he's going to stay on, but who's going to pay him?
I mean, he needs a seat.
He needs a job. I mean, would the party pay him, or is that how that would work?
Yeah, they can do that, and I suspect they will for a period of time. I mean, and this is going to be the issue, right? Is what do the Conservatives want to do with this? On some level, really, you want to go into a leadership race now? Is this the time where you want to rebuild the party when you've got, 140 plus seats and maybe the next time you will win? And if you're looking at, the possibility of a precarious parliament where it really depends on what happens, right? Like it depends on what sort of issues are put in front of us and whether Carney is able to get enough of a consensus to do what he wants to do, whether anything's moving ahead. And if Carney isn't successful and his polling numbers are dropping and the Conservatives are going up, right? Like is there a point of kind of riding this wave out for them? Or are they going to say, like, you know what, this was a failed experiment, Poilievre's gone, we're going to start again?
All right, Carney, how long does it take for him to pick up the phone and call Donald Trump?
Oh, it should be really soon.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's got, at this point, like, I think there's going to be a lot of curiosity about who he's going to put in his cabinet, who's going to be the team around him. I think he needs to indicate some of that, honestly, before he starts to take steps as a prime minister. He needs to swear in a government. But I can't imagine that there's going to be too much time passed before he wants to get Trump on the phone. Now, I mean, I also think that Trump is going to start squawking sooner rather than later.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't looked at social media in the last 20 minutes, and maybe he has already. I don't know. But I don't think he's going to have his opinions, too. And so Carney has only so much control over that.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting, Lori. Could talk all day, but thanks so much. We won't tie you up anymore. We know you're busy and have other engagements. Thanks, and we'll talk again soon.
That sounds good, Todd. Take care.
All right, take care. Lori Turnbull, Dalhousie University Political Science Professor. Steve Murphy. What did you think of what Lori had to say?
As usual, I think Lori's got it just about right. Yeah. I think, to me, the most interesting question is, and you didn't ask me this, but I'm going to toss it out there. Yeah. The idea that Poilievre did so well with the popular vote, that the Conservatives had such an increase in seat count, and that he didn't win his seat. Yeah. I think we need to find a way to kind of massage all that together. And I can't help but think that the fact that he didn't win his seat in Ottawa was a referendum on his support for the truckers. If you look at all the Ottawa ridings, they were won by Liberals with big majorities. It wasn't just Carleton. Yeah. So how is it that a man who made his party more popular in popular vote, the best popular vote the Conservatives have had since 1988, better than Harper in 2011. Their seat count is up. How is it that the guy who did that didn't win his seat?
Well, the NDP, let's face it, was the biggest gift to the Liberals, was it not?
Huge gift. Yeah. Look at the riding of Halifax.
Yeah, that's right.
Where this was a fortress for the New Democratic Party under Alexa McDonough and with Megan Leslie. All the seats in Metro were NDP at one point.
That's right.
Now this entire province is a Liberal fortress except for down in West Nova.
Yeah, I mean, the NDP ostensibly could have had, let's say they had 25, 30 seats. That could be the difference.
And here's something significant in Halifax. Mark Boudreau, who was way behind Shannon Meadema, but he came second.
Second, yeah. At least he got blown out off the map.
Yeah.
I guess, and that's I think Jagmeet Singh and what he did to the party.
But again, what happened with Mr. Poilievre almost seems like it's symbolic of the issue, which is that Canadians were ready for the party and its ideas, but somehow people didn't warm to Mr. Poilievre.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway,
okay.
But it all depends on whether you're buying or selling, too.
Yeah,
it was a good night for the Conservatives.
Yeah.
It was a good night for the Liberals. It was
Yeah.
a bad night for the NDP, every way you look at it.
Yeah.
But it was a good night for the Conservatives, a good night for the Liberals.
Yeah. Okay, we've got Steve Murphy here in studio. We're going to talk with Sean Fraser, and we'll see what else goes on as well. We'll be back. All right, so we are talking about the election results, and joining me now is Sean Fraser, who happened to hold on to his seat and in quite dramatic style in Central Nova. Sean Fraser, congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right, so in hindsight, unquitting was a good move for you, eh?
Well, look, I think coming back was an even better one. I'm looking forward to making sure that I have the opportunity both to be a present husband and father, but also to do the job as a member of Parliament at home and in Ottawa. This is exciting. The work ahead is incredibly rewarding, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who took the opportunity to vote, and in particular those who put their name on the ballot in the race last night.
Okay, why do you think? What do you think happened here? Why do you think the Liberals had the night that they had?
Well, look, the number one issue that I heard consistently from people on the doors was they wanted a government, a prime minister, and a representative who was committed to standing up for Canada in the face of threats from the United States and Donald Trump's tariffs that he's launched against our economy. When people had that question put to them directly, they had an opportunity to select one of the most respected economic voices in the world in Mark Carney. There are a number of people who voted for different parties, and I think going forward, we're going to have to ensure that we include them in the conversation to understand different perspectives and try to sincerely learn something along the way from people who may have a different partisan affiliation. Though in an election, those who may vote Conservative are your political opponents, they're also our neighbors and fellow citizens, and we owe a duty to represent everybody.
Okay, so how do you reach out to those people who feel that they're not been listened to or they've been left out of the political equation? It's a hard sell. How do you do that? How do you begin that process?
Well, look, it's about showing up. And I think regardless of who you may vote for, the challenges that people are facing are similar. Of course, the entire economy is under threat from the proposed and actual tariffs launched by the United States. But there's also real challenges around the cost of finding a place to live, around whether people's wages have kept up with inflation, whether people have access to the healthcare system that they deserve. So there's a number of challenges that are not unique to supporters of one party or another. And if we engage meaningfully on the ground with people to understand what is keeping them up at night, to make sure we're addressing their anxieties, we're going to find that there's solutions that will actually address the problems of supporters of both major political parties. But you can't do this from sitting behind closed doors in a boardroom on Parliament Hill. You actually have to go to talk to people in their doorsteps and their communities to understand what they're going through. So continuous engagement as a member of Parliament is going to be the name of the game for my part.
All right. Typically, traditionally here in Canada, we support centrist governments. We're seeing it in Ontario. We see it here in Nova Scotia. And would you consider this a centrist government?
Look, certainly, I think Mark Carney is a pragmatist, and I think what people have responded to more than anything is his relentless focus on the economy. People understand the challenges that we're facing are of an economic nature, though they may be threatened by an external force. They think that there are solutions that we can implement both internal to Canada and decisions we can take that will help the Canadian economy by engaging with partners in other parts of the world. More than being a centrist on the spectrum, which means different things to different people, I think it's the focus on the economy and the well-being of households when it comes to being able to put food on the table that really spoke to people in this time of unique situation, given the threat that we're seeing to our economy.
All right. Regionalization and alienation is been a challenge for decades here in Canada. Alberta feeling left out of the equation. How does the Liberal government mend those fences or tackle that?
Well, look, I spent 5 years living in Alberta, like so many other Atlantic Canadians of my generation. When it came time to pay down those student loans after I got out of school, realizing that you had an opportunity to find meaningful work that just wasn't available at the time in Nova Scotia, very quickly led me and my household to move west. We have to make sure that we leverage the relationships that we do have, but also rely on the people who've just been elected from those provinces to bring a message that may not reflect exactly what we're hearing on the East Coast or in central Canada, but also takes the lessons from the Western Canadian provinces. It's pretty clear that the economy in Western Canada has unique and disproportionate benefits for the entire national economy. And if we don't support the economy in Western Canada, it's not just Albertans who will pay the price. It's a lot of Atlantic Canadians who travel out west for work on a fly-in, fly-out basis. A lot of guys work in the energy sector out there, a lot of folks in the trades that make a good living and spend that money back home after they get back out east. So we have to engage on the ground just like we do here, and we thankfully have representation as it stands now in each of the provinces across the country. So listening to the voices that represent communities out there, not just from our own party, but from others, and engaging with the relationships that those of us on the government side of the House of Commons have is going to help us ensure that we reflect the needs not just of one region of the country, but the entire federation.
Sean, congratulations. I know you're busy. I'll let you go, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. And thanks to everybody who came out to vote. Your voice is important, and it's a pleasure to serve.
Okay, that's Sean Fraser, and he won his riding, Steve Murphy. What do you think of that?
Well, I think, we got a pretty good sign. When I walked in here on your program last week, Sean was on with you, and then later that day, the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, was in Trenton. So I think that was a telex message to us that the Conservatives thought they had something going in Central Nova. And they did. The redrawing of the riding favored the Conservatives in some respects because the riding gave up Antigonish, which had a very liberal tradition, and picked up parts of the Eastern Shore where there were some pretty good Conservative roots. So it does seem to me that the advance polls are what won it for Sean Fraser. The votes that came in yesterday, I think, went the other way. So, yeah, close race, a nail-biter for sure. No doubt about it.
What are some of your broad strokes takeaway from last night, Steve?
Well, like I said a moment ago, Todd, it seems to me if you're a liberal, there were good things for you last night. If you're a conservative, there were good things for you last night. I can flip it around and say, look, the Liberals didn't get a majority. Yeah. They came close. And by the way, these aren't the final numbers.
Right.
So there could be a majority here. It'll be a small majority. I said in your program I thought Carney was going to get a small majority, so I was wrong. The Conservatives did better than expected, although the polling generally was pretty good. The national poll numbers proved in the end to be right. Nick Nanos' numbers on Sunday were pretty well right on the money. Lori Turnbull made a brilliant point when she said that there appeared to be a late change in the 905 around Toronto. And I think that's because Poilievre was very good at making the change argument. And I wonder if the change argument had been as well articulated beginning a month ago, if the results might be different today, or if the election were a week from now, if the results might be different. Because I think the change message was beginning to resonate with people in a way that it hadn't done in the first few days and weeks because of the Trump factor.
Yeah, despite all of the positive numbers and the growing of the seat count and the popular vote for the Conservatives, I still get the feeling that Conservative supporters are not waking up happy today.
No, they're not. Yeah. I mean, and how could they be?
Yeah,
because
that's right.
The dyed-in-the-wool Conservative in this country, up until I would say the middle of January, thought that there was going to be a big Conservative government, and there isn't. Although the consolation prize, if there is one, is best result since 1988.
Yeah.
However, for the Liberals, best popular vote result since 1980.
Right, yeah.
So that's why I say there is something in it for both of the major parties. Sean Fraser also said something that I hope actually materializes, and that is the realization that just because you voted for the Conservative candidate doesn't mean you're against everything the Liberal was advocating. And the converse is also true. Just because you voted for Mark Carney doesn't mean that you don't agree with Poilievre on some of these cost of living issues, which I think did really resonate with people. They truly did.
What happened to the NDP?
Well, if it came down to a binary choice in people's minds, which it did, a lot of New Democrats said, I don't want a Conservative. So I'm going to vote for a Liberal. I mean, even the NDP advertising in the end was acknowledging that was the way people were thinking, because the NDP advertising began to encourage people not to do what they knew they were going to do. Yeah. And by the way, this showing for the NDP is fewer votes than the Bloc Québécois, at least currently. And again, the count isn't finished. But the New Democrats are down around 6.5% of popular vote. Wow. Yeah. You consider that, in 2015, Tom Mulcair was on track to win the government. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Jack Layton, of course, we know that story.
Well, and he planted the seeds. Yeah. He actually nurtured the seeds, many of which were planted by Alexa McDonough. I keep going back to Alexa McDonough. She planted a lot of seeds that eventually, came to fruition.
All right. So, why do you think that the slam against Carney when it comes to revelations about his business dealings and tax, why did that not stick?
Well, I don't know. I've come to a couple of sort of tentative conclusions, which is a way of saying I'm not sure. But I think that the campaign was just short enough. The whole process was just short enough. And by that, I mean, if you say that the starting gun was the day that Chrystia Freeland announced she was resigning, followed a few weeks later by Trudeau's decision to exit, followed a few weeks later by Carney's succession to the Liberal leadership. If you consider how quickly all of this has happened, Todd, Canadians had quite a long time to get to know Pierre Poilievre, long enough to know in the minds of some that he wasn't their cup of tea. On the other side of it, how well do we know Mark Carney? Mm-hmm. We know his resume. Mm-hmm. Most Canadians can tell you he was governor of the Bank of Canada and that he was governor of the Bank of England. They know about his connection to Brookfield and business. But we don't really know him because he's only been around for 4 months, 3 months as a politician. Yeah. And by the way, up until yesterday, he said he wasn't a politician. Yeah. Well, he's now one of the most successful politicians we've ever seen in terms of a comeback. But I don't think we know him all that well. I think many people like what they've seen. But how much have we seen?
Do you think people look at they say, look, he's a business luminary, he's a business magnate, he's this is the way business is done. The Irvings do these things. We don't knock the Irvings for that. The odd person does, but they're generally observed well in this area. Do you think that people kind of look at it and say that's the way business is done?
I think the perception is that Carney can sit down and talk tough to Trump.
Yeah, sure.
And the phone call that he made to President Trump, or I don't know who initiated the call, but that call helped Carney's image because Trump didn't come out immediately afterward and make disparaging comments about him or the country. Now, it was revealed very late in the campaign that apparently the president had made some comments during the call, but Mr. Carney didn't reveal that. So he probably got quite a bump from not revealing that Trump had continued with a lot of the 51st state rhetoric, which, and in my lifetime, Todd, I've never seen anything motivate Canadians into a unified position than to hear the President of the United States refer to us as the 51st state.
Yeah.
I mean, if the country can be unified in that way, the country could get behind the Leafs. It's the same sort. No, it is. It's the same sort of thing. Yeah. And I think that, a lot of people maybe felt that, we need somebody who Trump will respect and listen to.
Yeah.
But now I'm not so sure that, I think that there is a begrudging respect there from Trump. I get that sense. Although, who knows with him?
I think he definitely views him differently than he would have viewed Justin Trudeau, for sure.
Well, we know that Mr. Trump did not care for Mr. Trudeau and vice versa.
No, that's right. Okay. All right, we've got Steve Murphy sticking around for a while, and when we come back, we'll chat with Lena Metledge-Diab, another victorious Liberal. We'll get to that when we come back. All right, continuing our election coverage, we've got Steve Murphy here in studio, and now we'll have a chat with Lena Metledge-Diab, who maintained her seat in the riding of Halifax West. Congratulations. It must feel good, eh?
Thank you very much. It does. It was a lot of work, a lot of people. First and foremost, thank you to the voters who came out and voted, and to the supporters and the many volunteers. It takes a lot of hard work to get to this position and to run an election. Thank you to everybody who put their names on the ballot. It's not easy.
Hey, Lena, Steve's got a question for you. If that's okay.
It's Steve Murphy. Listen,
good morning, Steve.
How are you? You're better than you were.
Thank you.
Yeah. Listen,
thank you.
It's one thing to win, but you got 65% of the vote.
It's amazing. I don't believe all my polls are yet in either. I'm not sure which ones are still left out, but was a lot of hard work. We worked extremely hard to get the advance polls and the continuous polls. I believe we had about 30,000 in those polls that voted.
If you look at the numbers
ahead of Election Day,
if you look at the numbers across the Halifax ridings, Todd, Darren Fisher, these are preliminary. Darren Fisher, 68% of the vote. Shannon Meadham, 63% of the vote. Lena Diab, 65% of the vote. Braden Clark, 62% of the vote. Yeah. I'm talking about the four ridings in Halifax, and then you can add the South Shore and you can add Central Nova, which touch on the HRM. This is a Liberal town. Yeah. These are big numbers.
I would say Nova Scotians have spoken, and it's great. Every vote counts. It really does. But I've never seen in my lifetime people disengaged, regardless of how they voted. I don't know for sure, but I see 70% perhaps of Nova Scotians voted. I've never seen this turnout before, so I wish it was more. It felt like it was going to be more, Todd and Steve. It really did at the doors.
So Lena, you now can have the role of elder statesperson or whatever terminology you want to use. But it's true, though. You get some rookies coming in here, and do you accept that role as being kind of a mentor, role model? And I'm sure I'm sure that you're okay with that.
Listen, I tell you, I'm thrilled that I have 3 more female candidates from Nova Scotia.
Bright young women. Absolutely.
I was the sole female from Nova Scotia last time, and NP I did not have any. There was a couple from New Brunswick and 3 from Newfoundland, 2 of which were not reoffering. So I don't know what the female count is now from Atlantic Canada, to be honest, but I'm absolutely thrilled that we have 4, including myself, superwomen going to Ottawa from this province.
Okay, what's the time frame? When any time frame as to when you get sworn in and all that? What are some of the logistics going on here?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of apparently federally, it's quite different from Nova Scotia, which is where I was more used to. I mean, last time I won, it was still the end of COVID, but federally, each MP is sworn in separately. And you've seen how many we are, so it will take apparently some time to get everyone sworn in. I don't really have a date at this particular time. It may take a couple of weeks for everyone to get sworn in. I'm not sure. I'm actually surprised they do it that way, but apparently that's how it gets done. So regardless of when, though, because I am an incumbent and I'm already a member of Parliament, I continue to do my business, if I could say that, here in the constituency with my office, with the things that we have going on. There may be things that I might be limited to until we're actually sworn in or we have a government. But for the most part, it'll be business as usual.
Lena, congratulations. Well fought, well deserved. Steve, any parting words?
No. Congratulations. Tough.
Thank you very much.
Hard to win 2/3 of the vote in an election. Hard to do.
Yes, thank you very much, and I look forward to having more chats with you because it's one way to engage with people as well. So thank you very much.
Okay. Good luck. Take care.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Bye-bye.
Lena Metledge, Halifax West. Like you said, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, right, Steve?
The numbers speak for themselves. Yeah. I mean, and again, the polling was correct. And I think it's important to say that because if the polling had been wrong, we'd be sitting here railing on about the polls. Yeah. But the polling that suggested that the Liberals would do very well in Atlantic Canada turned out to be largely correct. And the national pop vote numbers were pretty much on the money.
Are you surprised, or perhaps it might come a bit of an undercurrent of a perhaps, I don't know, something was amiss with the election? Like none of that. I don't think Canadians have that appetite for that.
No, and you know what? I give Mr. Poilievre an immense amount of credit for not saying anything like that. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think he has been very dignified in the way he's handled all of this. When you consider that he is going through the hardship of not winning his seat. But I thought his messaging last night was pretty good. I mean, he's a very, very confident man, and I think that he perceives correctly that he has He has an opposition mandate, clearly a good, strong opposition mandate, even if he doesn't have a seat. But that's a problem. He's going to need to get a seat, and I assume it will be in Alberta. And I think he'll have to move on that quickly because he's not the leader of the opposition until he's in the House of Commons. Yeah. So he's going to have to designate somebody when the House goes in to take that.
That'll be tough for him to sit and have to watch that. I would think that'll be brutal for him.
Yeah, although I have no doubt who's going to be calling the shots because he's a very, very decisive leader. Yeah. I mean, some would say he's too autocratic as a leader, but no, and he knows his politics.
Yeah. Maybe Michelle Rempel or somebody.
Well,
might
yes,
could
easily be
She's
somebody.
She's very
like
savvy.
Well, listen, there are a lot of good conservatives get elected.
Yeah, for sure.
By the way, in a minority government, finding your speaker is always going to be a challenge. Yeah. And that's why I think Elizabeth May is going to feature into this. Not because she'll be speaker, but I'd be very surprised if in the end Ms. May doesn't find a way to largely caucus with the government on some issues. And that one seat could allow Mr. Carney, the Prime Minister, to get one of his own people.
So he may offer her that the chair, the Speaker's chair? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, he could. I think it would be a very interesting House of Commons with Elizabeth May in the Speaker's chair. And let me state my bias. I've known Elizabeth since we were the two of us were teenagers, and I've got a lot of respect for Elizabeth May. And I know some people think she's a little over the top, and I agree. But that's one of the reasons I like her. Well, she's plucky, and she's blunt, and she's not everybody's cup of tea. But yeah.
Well, and let's face it, the Speaker's not a very high bar considering what the Liberals, the last couple of speakers have conduct themselves like.
Best perks in Canadian politics, though. You get a house and a cottage, and you get your own bottle of. There's a Speaker's Scotch.
Nice.
Yeah, some distillery makes the Speaker's Scotch.
Nice.
I can't imagine who drinks it. But yeah.
All right, Steve. I want you to stick around, if you will, for a bit more.
Well, I'll be listening to the open hour one way or another, Todd.
All right, we'll be back with Steve Murphy.
Thanks.
All right, what we're going to do is we're going to have the tag team call-in segment with Steve Murphy and myself, Todd Veinotte. In case you look, when I'm sitting here with Steve, I got to remind people that I'm here because Steve the Legend is looming large. What do you think, Steve?
I'm trying to get over the imagery of you and me doing a tag team, like Grand Prix wrestling. Or something.
There you go. Yeah. Okay, so give us a call 902-405-6000 if you'd like to give us a call, and Steve and I will do our best to respond and react to what you have to say.
I'm going to mostly listen. I can't wait to hear what the callers have
to
say.
We'll see. I don't know. 902-405-6000. John, hello.
Hello.
Hi there. Go ahead, John.
Well, the thing about this election, and I'm glad it's over, that we don't have to hear all this stuff anymore, but I can't believe that 2 months ago or whatever it was, that the Conservatives were at least 35 or 40% ahead of the Liberals until Trudeau stepped down. And it amazes me that how Canadians, because one man came in and became the leader of the Liberals, but everybody else there is still in there that was with Trudeau, and yet the Canadian people, because they got a new leader, thought that everything is going to change. And it's really surprising how people, change their mind so quickly, all because of a new leader who came in to represent the Liberals. Like I said, but the same people are still in back of them yet. But anyway, that's politics for you.
You sound disappointed, John. John, am I reading you correctly? Do you sound let down or disappointed?
Well, actually, I was disappointed a little while back. But no, I'm not disappointed in one way because at my age in my life, it doesn't really matter anymore who gets in because it's not going to affect me very much. But to me, I always said that after 10 years of Liberals, wouldn't it be nice that if they gave somebody else a chance to lead the country, give them a chance? I mean, a few years back, if you remember, we voted in Joe Clark, and Joe Clark became Prime Minister, I don't think much longer than 6 months. And because he raised the tax on gas a few cents, he got eliminated. And then when the Liberals came in, they put it up 9 cents instead of the 3 cents that Joe Clark was doing. Like I say, politics it'll never surprise me what happens in politics. Anyway, you can comment on what I said and have a good day.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. Well, that's the game, the name of the game, right? Name recognition. That's how politics works, right?
Definitely a factor.
Justin Trudeau, let's go back to 2015, resurrected the Liberal Party.
But if you want to go back to 1979-80, which the caller was referencing, the reason the Clark government was defeated, I think, in 1980 by Trudeau, who, by the way, had left and came back. He pulled a Sean Fraser or Wayne Long. Yeah. No, I mean, to be serious, because the Clark government was seen as being incompetent, and there were personality issues around Joe Clark. Remember, he'd been disparaged as Joe Who. People didn't think he was up to the job. So there's always a personality component in these things. And I believe that when the research is done, that resistance to Mr. Poilievre's personality will be a factor, will be found to have been a factor in this. People liked Carney. Many people liked Carney more than they liked Poilievre.
Listen, part of the story about the Conservatives here is that it's a double-edged sword because it's part of what ingratiated so many people to the party. But it's also what pushed people away, and that's that hard edge of the party that exists. And when I say the party, I mean a portion of the party. Yeah. And to give you an example, somebody sent me a video of a Poilievre rally, and the CBC van pulled up, and they were booed and hissed at and almost intimidated by a crowd of conservative supporters at this thing. And I just thought to myself, that's a hard edge that is I don't like it.
Not only is it a hard edge, but and forgive me, because I know that he would, if he were here, and he's probably not listening, Pierre Poilievre, it strikes some people as being Trumpy.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying that Poilievre is Trump. That's not what I'm saying. But when you use those kind of words, and when you see that kind of behavior, it evokes images of what many people don't care about President Trump.
Yeah, but that said, that is part of why they had the support that they did get, as you've outlined, right?
Yes, some of it, yeah, no question. Although there's never been any doubt in my mind that Pierre Poilievre is a way more substantial human being than Donald Trump.
That comparison, so. I've never thought that.
And I think that whether you agree with Mr. Poilievre or whether you don't, I think he's an extraordinary political talent. And if you read any of the books that have been written about Poilievre, this man is a political genius in many respects. You might not like his tactics, but it's hard to argue with his results. Even the result yesterday, the guy has the best popular vote for a conservative leader in 37 years. This is significant and worth observing. However, the liberal result is better, but it's not a majority. I mean, there's something in it for everybody except the NDP.
902-405-6000. Gustavo, hello.
Hi, Todd. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I am very disappointed with the results of the elections because I am 27 years old, and I don't think the Liberals are moving us towards the path of Gen Zers or millennials ever being able to afford to buy a home or even to save for the down payment of a home. Well, they have had a clear policy upon that. Actually, the GST on homes under 1.3 million, which the Liberals copied, but washed a little bit. And there are so many policies at the end of the race that the Liberals started just copying from Poilievre. And it was hard for me to understand because I thought it was such a big wave of support for the Conservatives, and I thought that young voters were attending the polls and that would bring some change. But I think that fear spoke better than hope, louder than hope within this election. So I think the narrative that the Liberals were able to instill, that the fear of Donald Trump, fear of the terrorists, the fear of being next, they won. It was successful, unfortunately, and I think that's because of lack of engagement by voters. I mean, I think I think it's a bit, I don't want to sound pretentious, but I think that's a bit of political ignorance because everybody knows the threat of annexation is ludicrous. The tariffs have already been imposed. We're already suffering the consequences, and Carney has proven to be not to be successful in fighting against the tariffs. He lied about his call with Donald Trump. He said Trump didn't sparkle any interest in annexing, and then Trump released to the media that actually he told about having Canada's 51st state, and even after the call, Trump still laid out tariffs on, I think, the auto sector. So there was no progress within his call of Donald Trump. I don't know how voters think that Carney was better to deal with the tariffs. I think it was, there's also a problem in Canada, and this is coming from an immigrant, that there seems to be a chronic vilifying of conservatives in Canada. It seems that Canadian voters tend to lean liberal, and they think, it seems to me, this is very personal, that the Liberals are more moderate, even though, the cabinet minister, the ministers for Trudeau, they were so extreme, and some of them came from NDP, so they're the extreme far of left. But it seems like there's an overall consensus within Canadians that conservatives are harsh on public welfare state, and the Liberals are more moderate.
But Gustavo, let me push back a little bit, because you use the word fear, and I would suggest that fear was a tactic that the Conservatives used a lot, and it was the fear of, if you don't elect us, this country will not exist, and some very harsh language that Pierre Poilievre used, almost trying to strike fear into people to vote for him, as opposed to hope and change, which he pivoted to in the last couple of weeks. So maybe there's a double-edged sword to the word fear there, Gustavo. What are your thoughts?
If I may, I don't think fear was the strongest word within the Conservative. I think it was, I do agree that Poilievre harvested on anger and frustration, but the anger and frustration it's here, it's real. Young generations are frustrated, are angry. There was a real age divide within this election. We're seeing a divisiveness from boomers against millennials and Gen Z like never before. And we've seen memes mocking, boomers. And so the country is very divided, and we have a real threat of secession within Alberta and Saskatchewan. This is real. Canada's unity is at risk. As and what the country now called Canada, as it is, all the provinces together, might not be the same in the future. And this is very risky, because there's real frustration from voters. There's a real polarization in Canada that is similar to American standards right now. And this is really bad. I do not think Poilievre is not to blame or responsible for that at all. He chose a static of harvesting upon frustration or anger. I don't think if he harvested on fear, I would disagree with that. I think the Liberals harvested on fear with Carney. Carney was a person that nobody knew about. He spent most of his life career in England, in Europe. So he is an undamaged politician. But as soon as he came, the scandals started appearing.
Okay, Gustavo, I'm going to let you go. Steve, you want to weigh in on that? What are your thoughts?
Well, just to say, I think there's a great deal in what this gentleman says that's worth listening to, particularly because it does seem that Mr. Poilievre has resonated more strongly than ever with people in that demographic. I believe the gentleman said he was 27 years of age. Yeah. And it is significant that my understanding of the numbers as they are at the moment is that the Conservatives have done well with younger voters. This is something new. Mm-hmm. And it is important, I think, that we all spend a lot of time listening to other people, particularly younger people, because that gentleman has said a lot of things that clearly indicate that the Poilievre message has resonated with younger voters who do feel frustrated. And, you said it's fear, he said it's frustration, lack of hope. Yeah. I mean, I think we can nibble around, the edges of those words. But Poilievre did resonate with younger voters in a meaningful way. Yeah. And it's important, I think, that we all spend some time listening to each other.
902-405-6000, that's the way to reach us. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing to take your calls with Steve Murphy in studio here, co-piloting 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Steve, you having a good time?
Always. No, I'm really interested in how people see this, particularly people who maybe aren't happy with the outcome or wanted a different outcome. But because it's going to be very important. Sean Fraser said this. Mm-hmm. It's going to be very important for the Prime Minister to understand that even everybody who voted for him, doesn't necessarily disagree with everything Pierre Poilievre was saying, particularly about cost of living issues. And housing, like the young caller a moment ago. When I hear a 27-year-old man speaking in this country out of frustration about his economic future, we've got to listen to that. Got to listen to it.
And I don't think it can be overstated, the Trudeau factor being gone. That was massive, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, massive. 902-405-6000. Do you think that at any point that the Liberals thought that they could win with Trudeau?
I think Mr. Trudeau thought so.
He thought so, yeah.
But I didn't think so. And I think that part of the problem that Mr. Trudeau had in the end, and this was beautifully articulated by Frank McKenna, who, of course, was the most successful politician in New Brunswick history, who walked away after 10 years. But he admitted, after 10 years, you're so bubble-wrapped by your supporters, you don't know the truth anymore. It becomes hard to tell the truth. And I think Mr. Trudeau became very, very bubble-wrapped. He's a very confident man, And he did win 3 governments in a row, and he won in 2015 when very few predicted that he would. But he seemed to be the last one to know that he had to go. It took a phone call from Chrystia Freeland.
Yeah, for sure. 902-405-6000. David, hello.
Hi there. Todd, I guess I'll have to have the audacity maybe to disagree with Steve Murphy slightly. I don't think it was really great results for the Conservatives, considering everything that they had going for them, plus in Canada, the fact that every 10 years we tend to vote out our government regardless. So, the question they have to be asking is why, and that sort of brings me to my point that, it was my hope the Conservatives would lose and lose big, and that would just force them to focus on becoming something a little more credible, a little more sane, stop exploiting the anger and fear, focus on the complexity of issues, and maybe just come up with credible policy alternatives, because they do exist. And I mean, just to use the example of the environment, wouldn't it be great if we had an opposition party or a government sort of focus on trying to solve this problem in sort of the best and cheapest manner possible? And maybe that's sort of, being something different than, being pursued by the sort of current government. So, plastic bags are a good example. When used responsibly, disposable plastic bags are actually the best option for the environment, but it's that used responsibly part that's key. So when they're not used responsibly, they wind up in rivers, in the ocean, stuck in trees and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, you only have to read about the amount of microplastics we contain in our brains and our organs to realize that this is a big problem. So, Poilievre's stance on that was that, he's going to base his policies on evidence and affordability rather than elite virtue signaling and power grabs. That's a direct quote. So, so what, Pierre? Is there nothing in the Liberals' plastic bag then? It's just a complete, waste of a policy, no virtues, or is this sort of truth something a little more, nuanced?
Okay, all right. Steve, respond.
I think the gentleman makes very, very fine points. And when I say it was a good day for the Tories, I also said it was also a bad day for them. They didn't get a government. I think the gentleman makes very, very good points. And a lot of, I think, what happened with the Conservative vote and the fact that they didn't get to government is reflective of factors of the sort that he is mentioning, and that's on policy. But I think there's also a personality factor as well. I would also observe this. It's a long time since we had really a two-party election of this kind. And I set Quebec aside because the Bloc is such an anomaly in Canadian politics. But this was really a very binary choice for most Canadians. And as a result, both of the major parties elected members in all provinces. The Conservatives did not get a member on Prince Edward Island. But apart from that, both parties are represented in all provinces. So again, there are green shoots. But, my friend, and I appreciate your audacity, which I'm not offended by it at all.
I was just teasing.
I know. I love audacious discussion, but my whole point is it depends whether you're buying or selling. And I know that Poilievre didn't get a government, and a lot I people are disappointed, and understandably so. Yeah. But he increased the seat count, and it's the best popular vote they've had in two generations.
Yeah. And I listened to the results as they came in, and you definitely got that sense that, it's not going to be a majority pretty early on, and there was even some hesitancy and some nervousness and stuff like that. And, a conservative minority was in the balance. And, given the way people feel, current political feelings and stuff, it's a fairly good result because, the Conservatives didn't get wiped out. So those people feel they have that representation. Alberta has that sort of voice as well, too. So, even given the troubles of our first past the post system, I think the results generally reflect the sort of sentiment of the public, and they have for the last, 4 or 5 elections, maybe more. So it's yeah, for sure. And there's a lot to Steve's analysis there. So it's just kind of a segue into my point about, Poilievre and sort of the leadership. And I think the personality issue. So we're not.
Okay, David, thanks for the call. Take care.
Todd, a misfire on the change argument too. They were too late articulating the change argument. Poilievre got better in the last 2 or 3 weeks on the change argument because the caller makes a great point. In this country, we normally throw governments out after about 10 years. So the best before date was on the Liberal government.
And the marketing that the Liberals did. For whatever reason, left of center or centrist marketing in the States, the Democrats, they do it well. They seem to be able to market and package things well. And I thought that the Carney ads were on point when it comes to Trump and effective. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with that. I mean, the Mike Myers ad with Prime Minister Carney got a lot of attention early, got a lot of social media traction. It showed there was a bit of a sense of humor around him. And again, we didn't really know him. And I still maintain, I don't think most Canadians feel they know Prime Minister Carney very well. But what they know, they like. Yeah. Most people
kind of
like
the opposite of
seen.
Justin Trudeau, who is just so out there, right?
But look how long he'd been around. You talk about the accumulation of scandals.
Yeah, that's right.
And you were enumerating them all here on the program.
Yeah.
But my whole point is, Mr. Carney hasn't been around long enough to accumulate very much in the political world, where Mr. Poilievre has been.
Yeah, but still not around long, but still meat on the bone when it comes to moving the business, Brookfield, to the United States, not being truthful about the timeline. The Chinese bank business loan have $250 million. The tax havens, those should have resonated, but they didn't. Right?
They didn't. Well, I mean, they don't have a majority government, and it's no secret that Mark Carney didn't get into this to be a minority. He wanted a majority. He didn't want to be a minority prime minister.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to have Steve Murphy to the top of the hour. Got some room for you as well. Give us some calls, 902-405-6000. We'll continue when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, we're talking election. We're responding to the election. Steve Murphy's with me here in studio until the top of the hour. And by the way, we'll take your calls right to 1 o'clock today. So we'll continue with calls. 902-405-6000. That is the way to get a hold of us. Again, 902-405-6000. Alexander, hello.
Hi. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Quick question I had for you. Now, I'm old enough to have gone through a few federal elections, but why is it that Atlantic Canada always seems to have a liberal bias, I'll say? Every once in a while there's a few conservative seats, but do either of you might comment on the reason why it always seems Atlantic Canada decides to go liberal? And is there a fear of conservatism, or is there something else? And
good question.
I'll hang up.
I think our tradition here has been very centrist. Our politics in Atlantic Canada has tended to be very center driven, and the Liberals are often a party of the center. Brian Mulroney did very well when he swept the election in 1984. I mean, even Halifax elected a progressive conservative. The late Stuart McGuinness was the MP for Halifax. So I think that a lot of it just has to do with the policy perspective put forward by the party. Brian Mulroney was a very centrist conservative. He was a progressive conservative. And, when Stephen Harper won his government in 2011, he won 14 of 32 seats in Atlantic Canada, which means he didn't win 18.
Right.
So the caller makes a very good point. This particular brand of conservatism, which has been a little bit more, shall we say, to the right of the political spectrum, has yet to catch fire in Atlantic Canada. We have tended not to elect a lot of very right-wing political figures because I think we're people of the center, and quite often the Liberal Party has been very successful at taking up almost all the center of the political spectrum, with Mulroney being an obvious exception.
And Stephen Harper, of course, had some controversial comments about Atlantic Canada.
Well, he did.
Trying to reform EI.
Yeah, he made that culture of defeat comment, which he never recovered from.
No, and I would dare say that the party's never recovered from.
Well, that's somewhat true. Yeah. Although, the modern Conservative Party is still somewhat fractured along the lines on which it was put together between the Reform Alliance and the old Progressive Conservative Party. And we still tend in this part of the country to be more progressive conservatives. Tim Houston's government, for example, is more liberal than Stephen McNeil's government because Tim Houston is a real traditional PC. It's the reason he's got very little interest in saddling up with Mr. Poilievre, who strikes Mr. Houston, I think, as being way too reactionary. Yeah.
That term progressive is used a lot. Some would suggest that depending on the context, in a pejorative way, others in a complimentary way. How would you, if you were to try and encapsulate the word progressive, what falls under that umbrella?
Well, it's a qualifier. You know, when the Conservative Party became the Progressive Conservative Party, it's because it was trying to redefine itself as not being stodgy and out of date. So, but Darrell Dexter, when he was premier of this province, and before he was premier, and Darrell was a New Democrat, is a New Democrat as far as I know, described himself as a conservative progressive. So really, it's just a way of sort of qualifying, qualifying conservative, I guess.
Sure. Okay, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Topher, hello.
Good morning, people of the free world. Listen, Todd, what you and Steve, what would you guys...
I love that. I love the way the call starts.
The Grand Prix wrestling. What wrestlers would you guys be?
I'm definitely Killer Kyle Krupp.
Killer Kyle Krupp.
I was going for
Cuban
Krupp.
Assassin.
Cuban Assassin.
I was going for Krupp.
No, I'm Killer Kyle Krupp and the German Claw. I'll be
the Stomper. I'll be the Stomper. Yeah.
What about Stephen Pettipaw?
Big Stephen Pettipaw.
Yeah, there you go.
You've got to get Clary Fleming on here some morning to talk about wrestling. When I was doing the Murphy Mondays, we had Clary on for.
Oh, nice.
Clary was the voice of international wrestling.
Yeah. Topher, did you have a question other than that?
Well, I just had a comment, I guess, Todd. With Pierre Poilievre there, I kind of thought he was going to be the first homeless person, but then I guess Carney, he was sort of homeless. The opposite way.
I don't know what you mean, homeless. What do you mean? Are you playing a word game here?
Because no. Pierre lost his seat. He didn't get voted in.
Well, and actually, he won't be able to live in Stornoway either because that's the opposition leader's house. So he is going to technically lose his government-funded home.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And there's a reason why here. I think I can recreate it.
All right, that's enough of that. 902-405-6000. Look, it was fun, but you got to know when to end some fun, right, Steve?
That's what the button on the phone's for.
That's right. That's right. 902-405-6000. Rob, hello.
Good morning. How are you?
We're doing well.
I think. I'm from Toronto, so I've watched Rob Ford grow up. I've watched Doug Ford grow up. I've watched them all grow up. I think that you're going to see within 8 years, you're going to see Doug Ford as the prime minister. I think he's positioning himself. I've watched this for the last 6 or 8 years. I think he's just positioning himself. He didn't want to back Poilievre because of the policies, just like Tim Houston didn't want to back him either. And I think had Poilievre been more understanding to people and not so cocky and talking down to people, he might have had a chance. But I think you're going to see Doug Ford probably within 8 years be the prime minister.
Steve, what do you think of that?
Well, I think Doug Ford might have aspirations in that direction.
Yeah.
He better get into French immersion.
Yeah, I was going to say he's got to learn French big time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000.
I think Doug Ford would be interested in the job.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, super ambitious, obviously, right? And from Ontario, and has the audacity, I guess, to use that term, to consider himself to be that person.
And the other thing I'll say about Doug Ford is, and I think this is a fair statement, and again, I don't live in Ontario, but I think Doug Ford has surprised a lot of people as Premier of Ontario. I think when he got the job, a lot of people were pretty skeptical, but he's more or less grown into the job.
Yeah.
And he's a progressive conservative, too.
And one thing that Doug Ford has managed to do is to admit that he's been wrong from time to time.
Sure.
And to me, that is endearing, very endearing for a politician.
And he has what strikes a lot of people as sort of a nice way with saying things. He and Tim Houston are interesting political allies, too.
They're buds.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that in the depths of his private thoughts, Tim Houston might be interested in being prime minister.
Yeah, hard sell though, is it not? From the East Coast, that's a tough sell.
Well, the last Nova Scotian to lead a national political party in this country was the Honourable Bob Stanfield, who came close. Brian Mulroney, of course, was an MP from Central Nova. But
Peter MacKay sniffed at it, but that was it.
Well, I wouldn't preclude that Peter MacKay is interested in the job, and his French is considerably better than either Doug Ford or Tim Houston, far as I know. Now, Premier Houston might be more bilingual than I'm aware of.
Yeah. Okay, 902-405-6000. David, hello.
Hi.
Hi there.
Okay. I just have a comment about the election. I'm incredibly disappointed the Conservatives lost again, but not surprised. And I'm more so concerned going forward that we have a Liberal minority government again, probably for another 4 years. So that's going to give us 15 years of Liberal rule. So that's my first concern. But, the Conservatives, my opinion of their problem goes back not just with Mr. Poilievre, but the previous two leaders they elected, Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole. Neither one of those gentlemen, in my opinion, were ever the right people for the job when they were elected as the heads of the Conservative Party. And I felt the same thing about Pierre Poilievre. And Pierre Poilievre only rode high in the polls when, the much hated Justin Trudeau was in power. And Pierre Poilievre never was the guy for the job either. He just wasn't prime ministerial, and I really felt that. So I think the Conservatives have a problem at their national level. They have politicized it too much and cannot pick a good leader. And this has been shown with three guys that they've had now. And I would just say that the best chance they had was when Peter MacKay lost. Mm-hmm. Peter MacKay would have done an excellent job of running, and he was a guy that was able to speak for conservatives and spoke like a conservative.
Well, might he have another shot, Steve Murphy, Peter MacKay?
I would be surprised if we don't see Peter MacKay make another bid for the leadership of the Conservative Party.
Interesting. Why do you say that?
Go ahead, caller, please.
I just meant in the context that the Conservative Party nationally keep making the wrong decision with guys that they are people, man or woman, that they're going to vote through. And both Aaron O'Toole and Andrew Scheer were both two men who tried to sound like liberals, but they were conservatives, and that was their problem. And then I think they went to extreme with Pierre Poilievre. He came across as just too hard right. And so I think they really have to get their act together at the national level and elect somebody that can appeal nationally to Canadians, because they just can't do that. They've shown a terrible lack of ability to elect somebody that can defeat a Liberal. So that's my first comment. And the second thing I would say is that I'm really glad that the NDP have been reduced to non-official, non-party status, because I think this country needs to get back to more a two-party system so that voters can have more of a choice, a clearer choice, rather than fragment the vote between the four parties, and with the Greens and the NDP. And the NDP really, they're orange Liberals. They always have been. So that's why the Liberals won this time. They picked up that vote. But I would say I hope those parties are gone and that we can get back to a two-party system, because I really do think that's better for the country.
Okay, David, thanks for the call. Steve, what's your response to that?
I was just going to qualify one thing about Peter MacKay. It will really depend on when the Conservative leadership becomes available again, because I believe Peter MacKay is going to be, I think he's going to have a big birthday in September. I think he's going to be 60. Mm-hmm. So, if Mr. Poilievre is challenged and the leadership comes available in the next couple of years, I think that you would see Peter MacKay in there. I'm not sure we're going to get 4 years out of this government, by the way. And again, we don't know if it's a majority or a minority, but assuming this is a minority that depends on the support of the NDP, that could be a 2-year proposition. And I say that because I don't know that the NDP wants to repeat history. I don't know that they want to keep the government in power the way that Mr. Singh did with Mr. Trudeau, because in the end, that was a drag on their support.
Yeah. You think that Pierre Poilievre's message last night was like, we're not done yet, we're going to push and we're going to get rid of you? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that was his message, but his other message was, I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
It was clear in what Mr. Poilievre said that he was making it clear that I may have lost my seat. And by the way, he knew, I think, at that point that he was unlikely to hang on. But I think he was making it clear that he doesn't intend to go anywhere. So that was very much a defiant statement.
Right, but you were complimentary in not suggesting, but saying that he was gracious in his bow out.
Well, I mean, I think it was somewhat gracious. I thought it was a pretty good.
I guess gracious in that he didn't say, "Let's fight this. This is corrupt." Whatever. Again, talking about Donald Trump and the Gong Show that
right.
was right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Again, the Poilievre we saw certainly in the English language leaders debate.
Yeah.
That Poilievre was quite an impressive guy.
Yeah.
He modified his tone, and his tone last night was chippy, but it was, I thought, pretty appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. 902-405-6000. We've got Steve Murphy to the top of the hour. We've got room for you as well. 902-405-6000. We'll be back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. And Steve Murphy's with us for a few more minutes. 902-405-6000. Joel, hello.
Hi, Todd. First-time caller, long-time listener. So,
great.
This campaign leading up to the election was probably one of the craziest I've ever seen. I think Poilievre had it in the bag until Carney decided to cut the tax. I think that was a big snag of his wind. And on top of that, he just kind of held on to the Trudeau issue, and Carney kind of steered away from that, and he started focusing on platform and what it would look like going forward, and kind of passively still tying him to Trump. So I think that was a pretty smart campaign that he had run in the end, and probably why they got the government. I'm really worried about the Bloc Québécois being the party that's going to shift that can shift the power. Just because, a separatist party who has that kind of, I guess you could call it power, that they sway the power. Yeah. I'm really uncomfortable with that. I was really rooting for the NDP come about 10 o'clock when they're at like 10 seats. I'm like, please get enough to support the Liberals, because, I feel that would be the lesser of two evils. And and someone mentioned about Rob Ford. I think Tim Houston is really making himself. Yeah, sorry, Doug Ford.
Yeah.
I think Tim Houston's making himself really visible with trying to create, trying to remove the interprovincial boundaries for trade. And I think you may see him in 4 years if they're looking for a new leader. He might run. I think he would probably be a good choice to try and get some seats back in the Maritimes, especially Nova Scotia, where am I right? They lost all but one to the Liberals.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it, and it's really great to talk to you guys. So thanks so much.
Okay, any comments, Steve, on that?
I think if the current numbers hold, with the Liberals at 168 and the NDP at 7, that the NDP will be the balance of power.
Yeah.
The Bloc Québécois have 23 seats. It's a significant bloc. But if the Liberals don't need to deal with the Bloc on everyday matters, they probably won't want to.
Mm-hmm.
But, the problem is you can't ignore the Bloc either. The Bloc does speak for an important segment of the population in the province of Quebec. But the problem is, of course, the Bloc is against the country.
Yeah.
So how do you accommodate Quebec's aspirations while sort of cozying up to people who really have no use? And Mr. Blanchette, by the way, who is a man, I think, quite a capable and bright man, made some terrible comments about this being a fake or artificial country.
Horrible. Yeah.
Really, that was greatly offensive.
Yeah,
greatly offensive.
Absolutely.
And if that's how he feels, and I assume it is how he feels, then I very much regret that, because I've never thought that this is an artificial country, in part because of Quebec.
Yeah.
Quebec is one of the defining features of this very real nation of Canada, and there is a Canadian identity, and Quebec is very much a part of it.
Hello, Bob.
Yeah, hello. How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Good. Mr. Steve Murphy, this is Bob Murphy.
Hey, Bob. It's my cousin Bob.
Bob
is from the really rich side of the family, I'm assuming.
No, then I'm the other guy. Listen, I'd like some clarity on something here. Tim Houston, Doug Ford are progressive conservatives. They're the true conservatives, Sir John A.'s gang. There you go. Now, then along comes Preston Manning, and he decides that he forms a conservative party, Canadian Conservative Alliance of Canada, with the Reform Party and the defected PCs. So, what I wonder is that my generation, I'm in my mid-70s here, And is my generation deceived to believe that the Conservative Party, what's his name, Poilievre's gang there, and the leaders before him, they took the color blue and called themselves Tories. But they're not Tories. The Tories are Tim Houston and Doug Ford. That party. So am I wrong to think that?
Well, that's what
are we being deceived?
That's one interpretation of it. I mean, the Conservative Party under Sir Johnny MacDonald started out as the Conservative Party. It became the Progressive Conservative Party in the 20th century. But no, I mean, what we have now, what we call the Conservative Party, includes the old Reformers, the Canadian Alliance members, and the members of many members perhaps, of the Progressive Conservative Party. So, but that was a party, as I say, jammed together along a fault line that has never really totally disappeared.
Yeah. But as I speak with veterans, I'm a veteran myself, but the seniors that aren't, they don't keep up with politics so much, they still believe that they're voting for Tories, the real Tories. So I don't know if that's some form of deception going on here or what.
That raises the question, Todd. Who's Tory now?
Yeah.
Who's Tory?
Yeah, there you go. Like when the Reform Party amalgamated with defective Tories, they took the color blue and called themselves Tories, but they weren't. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, Bob. All right. Listen, we can get into semantics all day long when it comes to what's a Tory and what's a progressive conservative and what's a conservative. And when all is said and done, Steve, it comes down to who do Canadians trust, right? Who do they trust, and who are they comfortable with to run the country?
Well, yeah, and don't forget, this election was a change election, but some people got all the change they needed when the Liberals changed their leader.
That's right.
Did the party change? Did the platform change? Well, we don't know really. We're going to find out with Mr. Carney in power. The one thing we know is that they changed the head of the beast. Mm-hmm. And for some people, well, these results prove it.
Yeah.
For some people, that was all the change they needed or wanted,
sure,
or were comfortable with.
That's right. Steve, thanks so much. I appreciate you coming in very much. Your insight is always fantastic.
Well, listen, I enjoy being here. Now I'm just going to become a listener for the next hour. But no, listen, I love hearing what people say on this show. Public opinion really begins to form in the ether of talk radio. Always has.
Okay, great stuff. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, the way to reach us, 902-405-6000. That's the way to get a hold of us. Again, 902-405-6000. And a big thanks to Steve Murphy, who sat in for an hour and a half and was a great co-pilot taking calls. Now I'm flying solo again, 902-405-6000. So what are your thoughts on last night's election results? And moving forward, what do you think the future holds for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative government, or the Conservative Party, I should say? How long will the minority government stay intact? What about Mark Carney? What happened? All the response, folks. Give us a call, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Pam's a first-time caller. Hello, Pam.
Hi, and I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous. Nothing. Just you and I having a chat.
Yeah, I know, but I'll probably lose my train of thought. But I really feel that, I don't know, I get so frustrated listening to everything about the elections and that. And I really think the number one thing is Trump and what what the problems he's going to cause for Canada. And I really am upset. I have not liked the Conservative Party. I liked the old PC Party, and I heard another caller talk about that. When the Reform Party and the PC Party merged together, it's just too far right, and it's too Trumpy, like Trump, and they're like bulldogs. There's several on the Conservative side. Even if you watch the when they're in Parliament there, they're like a bunch of school kids arguing with each other, and those are our tax dollars paying
in fairness, Pam, the Liberals did a fair share of that themselves, and Justin Trudeau did a fair share of that himself.
Fair share what?
Well, of the name calling and of the jeering and of the bad behavior.
Oh yeah. Well, they kind of had to, but I mean, O'Leary. I think he was the first one when he started, like with his rhetoric. I just said, nope.
Yeah.
If you're going to talk like that, and I think about the example they're setting for young adults.
Yeah, you're talking about Kevin
really,
O'Leary? Is that who you're talking about, Kevin O'Leary?
Yeah, when he was there too, he was, just the way he spoke. And I wish they'd have a little more respect for each other, the parties, and work together better. People want to change regardless of if you're fighting or if you get along. So why not get along and work for the good of the country? Like, I don't understand it.
Well, Mark Carney has that opportunity to try and change that tone now, doesn't he?
He does, but boy, he sure has a lot of crap on his hands.
Yeah.
And he's going to, it's not fair. It's the same like, look, Trudeau went through, the COVID thing, the pandemic. I mean, it doesn't matter who would have been in there. They would have had to spend money and do that. So, yes, I know Trudeau made mistakes. They all do. Nobody's perfect. But I just don't like the example it sets for the younger crowd. I really don't. I mean, I might sound young, but I'm in my 70s. So, I just say, how come I can see this and nobody else is talking about it?
Well, I would say that when it comes to behavior in Parliament, I think that all parties have fallen well short of the mark of civility and discourse, and I think they all wear that. That's my take.
Yeah. Well, whoever's in, whatever party is in, and our prime minister, they're getting all the flack thrown at them, so they have to, I guess, defend themselves.
Well,
and that's right.
That's true, but
it's alive. I found that Polyev is telling too many lies, and just the way he kept referring back to Trudeau. Even after Trudeau's gone, he's still saying Trudeau.
Well,
and I said, what for?
Well, in fairness, Trudeau was fast and loose with the truth at times himself, just trying to balance the conversation. But Pam, I agree with you. I cannot question, period. And Parliament has become way out of line, yes, it's become a joke. And I agree with what you're saying. And let's hope that some civility is restored to the House of Commons.
With Carney.
Yeah, with Carney.
And that's why, I voted when it was a PC party. I voted PC. I voted NDP because of the issues once I lived in Labrador. So, and that was important then. But most of my life, I will admit, I have voted Liberal. But when I didn't like what the Liberals were giving, I went to a different party.
Yeah.
I'm not stuck there.
Right.
I guess they're just more my style, maybe. But I'm really excited about Carney. I think he's a very intelligent man, and I hope he can handle all this stuff. He's just got so much. He's got to make Alberta and Quebec happy, But I mean, when the Albertans say, how come they said something about the East, they always vote Liberal. That's not true. Stanfield, our bridge is, Stanfield, a bridge isn't named after. The airport is.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was PC. We've had a lot of PC leaders.
Okay, thanks for the call. Appreciate it, Pam. Thanks for the call. Well done.
Okay, bye.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Tony, hello.
Hi, Todd. How are you today?
I'm well. You?
Great. Listen, you and Steve were great this morning. I enjoyed the show much more today than I have in the past. I don't much want to talk about who won the race. It's at this point it's unimportant until we find out whether the government's actually in power or it's a minority government. But I do want to approach the policy issues. Nobody this morning is talking about the policy issues. I believe that the Prime Minister-elect got a big boost when Donald Trump actually endorsed him. I really do. I believe he got a big boost. And Trump went down the road again. But he, in turn, he forgot to mention that on the second phone call, the 51st state came into play, the Prime Minister-elect. So I want to know what the policies are going to be. And you know what I want to know? I'm affected by it. I'm an American. I'm a CFA. I'm a PR. And the Leger's survey that was done just a few days ago indicates that Canadians now, for the most part, by percentages, hate Americans, which doesn't make sense to me. I've never done anything to a Canadian that you should hate me for. In fact, I supported you in this particular issue. I believe that I listened to the Premier-elect, our Prime Minister-elect this morning say that we're never going to be this and we're never going to be that and we're never going to do this and never going to do that. Poke the bear, my friend. Young man, poke the bear. Remember, when it comes to Trump, I have pretty much been right on, well ahead of the rest of the crew. And I'm going to tell you, he's going to let Carney go just as far as he wants to let him go. And when Carney makes that decision to, well, maybe we ought to do a little business with China or a little business with Russia on the military aspects of this, if he makes that mistake, or he really believes, because he is an economist, that he is smarter than Trump. Being smarter than Trump's not a big deal. Trump is a sociopath and a psychopath, and all he wants to do is win. And he will win at any cost, whether it costs the American public or the Canadian public or both publics. He will try to win at any cost. He's not somebody that you fool with. If I said that if Trudeau went down and met with him when he first started this crap, that there would be trouble. Well, Carney can make the same mistake. If he makes any concession, which I believe his speech was a little bit off the mark in accepting the win. He has a win there, and I respect that. It's your election, and I want to say that if you recall, there was a little consternation when I said get out and vote. Well, apparently the people got out and vote, and they let their feelings known, and I'm proud of them. The Canadian people, I understand this is one of the largest votes in a long time, and a large vote done before voting day was actually here, and I think and I'm proud of that. So I don't know. What do you think? Does he have the wherewithal to really stand up to Trump and say, no, we are going to get an equitable deal? How far can he go? Trump only has to attack the car industry in Canada. Yeah. It's one of the biggest industries. Yeah. That's all he has to attack. And, Ford is an attack dog when it comes to that industry. He wants to protect his province. Mm-hmm. And how's he going to, what's Carney going to do with Alberta, with Danielle Smith? What's he going to do with her?
Well, he's got to. He has to allow, or he has to at least champion, to some degree, some energy projects and energy infrastructure to get Alberta crude and natural gas from landlocked areas to the coast, and Carney has to do that. I don't think he has any choice.
Absolutely. But his main concern has got to be what's at his front door, not what Danielle Smith's going to do. She made it perfectly clear. She's not going to play the game. She's going to look out for the province and that oil reserve that they have, that what is it, 100 years of oil? Yeah. So, it's no joke. He's an environmentalist. He's made no bones about it. His wife is an absolute, she's very environmentally attuned. So I want to know what the policy is.
Well, Tony, you say he's an environmentalist. Sorry to interrupt you, but Brookfield Management has done to my knowledge, a pipeline infrastructure in other countries. And look, I don't think you can climb to the ranks in which Mark Carney has in the world of economists and without having your tentacles in energy projects and energy infrastructure. Well, I don't think he's an environmentalist.
I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you. But is he going to? He has been quite forward until the end of the campaign about the pipeline issue and the going for the mineral issue, et cetera, et cetera. This country is rich. This country is rich. Canada really is a rich country, but they're not using their resources, and they're not using the resources because your country is not committed to be together. You got indigenous groups. You got out west versus out east. You got Quebec, who may have to be the prop up for the Libs, depending on how that turns out, right? I mean, the NDP's got 7 votes. That may not be enough if the count changes. But to me, it doesn't matter. I saw the early voting numbers, and it appeared that there's only a 2% difference in the actual voting number versus party. When you get to the pass the post issue, that's a different story. Yeah. And you got to accept that because that's your system. Right. And I accept that. But in the United States, they had 150 million people vote, and the current idiot that's in the White House won by 1.4% of the vote. People say he had a tremendous win. Well, this is not a tremendous win, but it is a win, and they're going to there'll either be a minority or a majority, and we're going to have to accept what they do, but I want to hear what they're going to do now that the fighting's done.
Okay.
It's in essence done.
Okay, Tony,
so that's what I'm asking.
Appreciate the call, pal.
Thank you very much. Okay. Have a great day.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Give us a call, folks. Got some open lines for you. We're going to take your calls to the top of the hour, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, give us a call, folks, 902-405-6000. Got lots of open lines for you. What is your reaction to the election last night? 902-405-6000. Here's an email from Alan. I'll read a couple emails while we await some calls. Again, 902-405-6000 is a way to get a hold of us. Alan says this. Says, what sealed the deal for me was the PC attack ad showing a couple of old farts at the driving range complaining about how the Liberals were at fault for everything bad under the sun, even going so far as to call them clowns. The PC platform even had some good things in it, but if these policies were trotted out much earlier and avoided the cheap insults, I might have been swayed. However, you know what? I must have been a clown too because I voted Liberal. That comes from Alan. And the first time I saw that ad, I was watching a hockey game, and my brother was over and his wife, and we were watching hockey. No, perhaps baseball, doesn't matter. Anyway, I actually was taken aback by how pathetic that ad came across. It really, really was bad, in my opinion. And I talked about this with Steve earlier. The marketing, I thought that the Liberals did a great job and you could call it BS or whatever terminology you want to refer to it as, but I thought that the marketing that the Liberals rolled out with Carney was pretty effective. And obviously it was. And I thought that that ad kind of was emblematic of poor messaging on behalf of the Conservatives. I agree with you 100%, Alan. I thought that ad was sad, actually. And obviously didn't work. 902-405-6000. Jim, hello.
How you doing, Todd? Good afternoon.
I'm well. How are you, my friend?
I'm sitting on my back deck. Drinking the Liberal Kool-Aid that I was criticized. I got a big quart of it. So anyway, I just want to make a quick comment that, I'm glad that we had a lot of people that came out and voted across Canada.
Yeah.
I'm impressed with, I'm not impressed with the posters when it came to Ontario. I think they got all that wrong. But I'm waiting like everybody else to see if the Liberals are going to get a majority. They're only 4 seats away. But I suspect that the 7 Democrats that lost their status, they're probably being on the phone now with somebody that's trying to convince them that we'll put that recreation center in your district if you walk across the floor. So who knows how that's going to turn out, the politics. But I was quite impressed. I'm glad the Liberals won. And I guess if anybody has concerns about Carney, you can put them to rest. The Canadian people, for now anyway, have spoken. I just hope that the parties, I think Poilievre has lost his seat. Is that true?
Yes, Poilievre has lost his seat.
Oh, okay, he did. So I think what the challenge for Carney with Trump, of course, is going to be able to bring all these groups together. And that will be the litmus test for me as to the Conservatives and the populists within the Conservative Party and the Bloc themselves. They're going to put all their stuff aside, as well as the Liberals, and really work on Trump now, bring this country together. So, but right now I think we have the right captain on the ship. We got a little bit of a new crew, and I think that the Halifax winner, by the way, I worked
for her yesterday all day.
Mm-hmm.
And my last conversation was with Shannon was, you're going to win this big time. So I'm glad she won. Halifax is on its way as well. So we'll see where we go from there.
Okay, Jim. Thanks for the call, pal.
Take care.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, we got lots of open lines for you. Give us a call. 902-405-6000. And Mark says in the subject line of the email, says, sour conservative here. Says, my take on the election is that fear is apparently a stronger motivator than change. We shall see if the majority of Canadians are correct about Carney dealing with Trump. And as a previous caller brought this fear angle into it and discussed the fact that Carney was striking fear into Canadians about Donald Trump, and I suggested that it was the Conservatives that used fear in a different way, and fear in that if you don't vote for them, the country will not exist. Practically, that was the message from the Conservatives. That if you do not wake up and vote for us, and you give these liberals another chance, the country will be destroyed literally, and you'll be foraging for food. I mean, this was the messaging. So I think that fear and that hard edge of the Conservatives were ultimately what probably didn't get it done for them. That said, that hard edge and that messaging, and look, I'm not saying that the Conservatives didn't have some legitimate points, because they certainly did. And the Trudeau record, I've gone on the record as being highly critical of the record and the scandals and the spending. But the reality is Trudeau's gone, and that neutered their campaign almost entirely. And Carney, for whatever reason, resonated with Canadians on a large scale. What are your thoughts on this, folks? Listen, give us a call. Maybe you've agreed with that. Maybe you disagree with what I had to say. Give me a call. Let's have a chat. 902-405-6000. That's the way to get a hold of us. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Before we go back to the phones, a quick email from Lee says, I haven't heard any discussions about the boomers. They are supporting the Liberals almost 2-1. They're the cohort most isolated from the cost of living, drugs, homelessness, etc. And they're the richest group, which the least amount of with the least amount of ongoing bills, as per Stats Can. They are the reason the Liberals won. Thankfully, younger Canadians who have had to deal with the past 10 years more strongly supported the Conservatives. The future is bright for the Blue Party, especially when Trump is no longer a factor. And that's absolutely true. The boomers came out in droves and supported the Liberals, but that's fair game. That's politics, folks. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Dave, hello.
Hi. I found that the Liberals, even though they were trying to paint Poilievre with the Trump narrative, also had like the TV media, like CBC and all them. Mostly, I hardly ever heard anything negative about Carney, and mostly always negative about Pierre. And they try to say, well, you know, they're fair and stuff, but they're very biased, especially when the leading incumbent is saying, I'm going to raise more ABC, you know, like to give, right?
Yeah.
So are you going to bite the hand that feeds you, or, you know?
Well, listen, that was, in fairness, Dave, Pierre Poilievre put a target on the CBC's back, right? He said, I'm going to defund you, I'm going to dismantle you. So when you do that, then that's a dangerous game, right? And because the CBC has immense power and immense reach, and you better win. If you're gonna play that card, you better win that card. And he lost.
Yeah.
So that's
I get it. I'm just saying that's one of the reasons why he lost.
No, I agree.
Because advertising is a huge factor in politics.
Yeah,
right?
I agree, Dave. Listen, I think that the coverage had a slant. I'm not going to say that it didn't because I agree with you. But that said, look, he started it with the CBC, and I'm not saying that wasn't. It's in the approach, though, Dave. Like instead of saying I'm going to dismantle you and defund you, and state media, you could go about it in a different way. I think a less abrasive way, and perhaps it's a different result. I don't know, but
I even remember, like, even through the Jean Pétain, Stephen Harper, the Conservatives have always been saying, let's defund the CBC and all that.
Yeah.
And it does cost them votes. And I hope if the Conservatives really want to get in, they stop that. So,
Yeah. Okay, Dave.
Saying, dismantling.
Okay,
anyway,
thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. And again, it's that hard edge, abrasive approach. I have no problem with somebody saying, look, the CBC is a crown corporation, and like all crown corporations, there's waste and there's fat to be trimmed, and we are going to do so if elected. I have no problem with that. But to say that we're going to dismantle it and it became the public enemy number one in the conservative circles, look, what do you expect? I think that it's just natural that you're going to get a bias built in. And is it fair that Mark Carney promised them $150 million? Probably not. Was he buying their support? Yeah, you could say that. But again, Poilievre started that fight and that battle. Now, that all said, that's the reason. Those are the reasons also why Poilievre was popular, and he did grow the tent, and he did grow the seat count and the popular vote by a lot. Really, the whole story of this is the collapse of the NDP. If the NDP got 35, 40 seats, then we were having a different story. We're having a different conversation today. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Give us a call. We'll get some open lines for you. Here's an email from Carl. Carl says this: 6 reasons I don't trust the Conservative Party leader. His open support of the truckers convoy and some local shady individuals. His approach and issues similar to Trump's. His refusal to get a security clearance. Premier Ford and Houston's lack of support for him. His silly negative name calling and negativity. His party's refusal to do media interviews. Without a leader with a seat in Parliament, the CBC is broken. Oddly, many of its supporters criticize Carney for not having a seat in Parliament. Okay, thanks, Carl, for sending that along. And look, folks, you can agree or disagree with that, but I think that again, I've used the term hard edge, that abrasive approach. Although it worked and that it won him a lot of support, I think it was a double-edged sword, and I've said that repeatedly today. Todd, hello.
Hey, Todd, how you doing?
I'm well, you?
Oh, not too bad. So I got to ask a question. Bringing up to the elections and everything else, Poilievre been looking really proud and strong. Liberals been looking down, especially in the East Coast here where I'm from. Do you think there's a lot of bias or any sort of we looked at the U.S. elections and how manipulated it was. Do you think there's any manipulation possible with what happened here in Canada?
What do you mean by manipulation? I'm not sure what you mean by manipulation.
Well, as a voter myself, we went and we looked at. I went and voted, and there was a lot of votes that were put in to give the Liberals the majority government that never would have been able to have been counted by the time they got there. And I'm just wondering if...
Do I believe there was election fraud? No, I don't. I don't believe there was election fraud. Is that your question?
It's not even election fraud. It's just I know everybody I talk to, and I know there's a lot of more people on your show that expressed in the East Coast that, you know, conservatives have it. And turns out it was the Liberals that had it. And everybody I talk to in the workforce and everything else, blue collar guy, is the same sort of thing. Nobody I know voted for the Liberals. So what the hell is going on is my question.
Well, again, I don't know. Like you said, your circle of friends, the people that you don't know one person that voted for the Liberals. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, of course I know people that voted for Liberals. They're you know, they're getting their seniors payouts and all this, and they voted for the Liberals since they were 18 years old.
Yeah.
Back in, you know, in the 60s.
Yeah. Well, Todd, it seems to me that you're kind of sniffing around that you don't believe in the results, and I can only deduce that you mean some type of election fraud. And is that what you're getting at?
I don't know if I'm getting at election fraud or not, or just the fact that it's been such a thing that I know myself as a 40-year-old man.
Yeah.
A lot of people I talk to that don't want to get out and vote because they felt it was it doesn't matter anyway. That there's already somebody up there pulling the strings on the puppets and everything else. So it's going to be what it's going to be regardless.
Well,
and that being said,
yeah,
it's, you know, a liberal majority government after 10 years.
No, it's a liberal minority government. It's not a majority. It's a minority.
Okay. Well, okay. Thanks for correcting me. It's just, but regardless, I mean, it's holy cow.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not really sure what you're getting at, Todd, but thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. Scott, hello.
How you doing today, Todd? I know you're doing well. Yeah, it's always good you and Steve get on there. I listen to your show all the time, but it's always good to have Steve on there.
Absolutely, he's the best. Absolutely,
he's a warehouse of knowledge, man.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So the last going off with the NDP's ads on the radio were it went out started with a man and a woman talking. The man says, "Oh, I can't keep up with all the news today," and then she speaks up and says, "Yeah, especially with the election going on." And then the man says, or the woman says, "Yeah, well, Poilievre was leading by so much." And then Kearney came along and then flipped off to the other way. And she said, "We're going to need the NDP there for us regular folks." Did you hear that, Ed?
Yeah, I did. Yes, I did. Yeah.
Like, what was that all about?
Yeah, it was horrible marketing. Horrible.
Yes, it was. It was terrible. That to me was putting anybody that was going to vote NDP down.
Yeah.
And I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you. I think their messaging and their marketing was brutal, and I think the results spoke for themselves. Right? They were decimated to 7 seats and non-party status, and Jagmeet Singh was a brutal leader of the NDP, and he just was, and he's gone, and good riddance, and the NDP have to rebuild.
Yeah, well, it didn't take him long to step down. I seen that coming, and I think probably his party should have got rid of him a while ago, and they might have done better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's pretty hard not to step down when you don't win your own seat. Not only did he not win his own seat, I think he finished third in that riding, and your party is obliterated and wiped off the map almost. I don't think he had much of a choice.
No, true. I never really wanted an NDP government, like provincially or federally, but when Bill Esterbrooks was alive, I always voted for him down where we live, down in Hubli and St. Margaret's Bay area, because he did an awful lot for this area. A lot of stuff for us, and he's missed. I think about Bill all the time. So thanks a lot for taking my call.
Okay, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000. Look, Jagmeet Singh he will be remembered. He probably won't be remembered. But for those who remember him, it'll be one of the worst political leaders of all time, in my opinion. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls to the top of the hour, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Darcy's the first time caller, so Darcy, I want to get you right on. Go ahead.
How you doing today?
I'm well. You?
I'm okay. A little disappointed.
Okay.
I don't know how to. I've been trying to sum it up to my wife almost, but anyway, it's just I can't believe what the Canadian voters, how fooled they can be. I mean, the carbon, and he'll flip-flop back. You watch. The flip-flop alone has destroyed politicians. The term has destroyed politicians over the years. People never even noticed. His stand, I mean, he was Trudeau's advisor. He was Trudeau's right-hand man. And nothing's really changed. Like, all of this is all old. You know, we've heard this. Why the Canadian voters didn't wise up to it. And one thing I'd like to say is, after the Americans elected Donald Trump for the second time, the criticism of the American public and all the Americans, that shows you the state of this. Is our entire media, the CBC, shows you the state of the American voters. What is wrong with these people? You know, re-elect that. This is a term. We'll be lucky to get through this term with the Liberals economically. They didn't run on their record. They ran on fear of Trump, and the Canadian voters put them back in again. I've lost any respect I lost for the American voting public. I've lost that now for the Canadian voting public. I told my wife I'd never vote again. I said, if the Liberals go back in, I'm done. I voted Liberal. I voted NDP. I voted Preston Manning Reform Party. I voted everything but Green over the years, both provincially and federally. I'm not stuck to a party. You know, we need to. We had a caller on last week, and he said that his father told him years ago that every few years we need to change because of the backroom deals that are going on with these politicians. These guys, they should have been gone, Todd. And I'm really disappointed. I'm disgusted. I'm just about all the disses you could probably think of. And like I say, after condemning the American public, for us to turn around and put these, I don't want to get insulting, put these guys back in and these gals back in, same bunch, it's an insult to someone who tries to be an informed voter. Chris, I believe, from Halifax is so thin, quite informed man. And I think we must just give up.
Well, Darcy, let me ask. Darcy, let me ask you this: do you think that Pierre Poilievre and the messaging and the job that they did, they bear some responsibility? I mean, you're entirely blaming the electorate on this, but what about Poilievre and the messaging? And they wear some of this, don't they?
He did 100%. He didn't do a great job. He lost his own seat. I mean, you know, he's a long-term politician. He's been a politician for 20-some years, hasn't he? And he lost his seat. I mean, you know, so something went wrong there. Yeah. But still, yeah, you know, you got to give due where due needs to be given. But still, the people and the I don't know. I'm bewildered. I'm bewildered how people could put this gang back in again. And I hope for the best. I mean, he flip-flopped in the carbon tax. Like I said, it'll be back. One of your callers a couple of weeks ago said it's not off the books. He just reduced it to zero. What's reduced it to zero? What's the good of it being there?
Yeah.
And a quick question, that carbon tax, they collected how many millions and billions of dollars off of it when it was in place? Where'd all that money go now that it's gone? Is the money in a fund somewhere, or is it in general funds? Is it?
Well, a lot of it was paid out in rebates. In fairness.
Oh, well, I know. I burn a fair amount of gas, and I never.
Yeah, no. Listen, I'm not a fan of the carbon tax. Never was, and no. I disagree with you, Darcy. I don't think you'll see the consumer-facing carbon tax reemerge. I don't think the Liberals would go there.
Hope not.
Yeah.
It would be suicide, wouldn't it? Not suicide. You know, I mean, political suicide.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I thought it was a brutal policy, which made no sense at all.
It was senseless. It was senseless, and not just on getting the money back that he took in.
Yeah, no, it was silly. It was silly. Listen, Darcy, I appreciate the call. Thanks for the call, pal.
All right, thanks. Man.
All right, take care. All right, another first-time caller, Kevin. Hello, Kevin.
Hey, Todd, how you doing?
I'm well. You?
I'm great, thanks. I'm a first-time caller. I just want to say a couple of things. A lot of people are crying and all about this election and stuff like that. If more conservatives would have voted, then the tides would have maybe perhaps been different. But, you know, everyone's crying that's calling in about conservatives. Just suck it up. And, you know, people on Facebook name calling the people who voted for liberals. You know, we're all adults here. Like, people just got to grow up.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. Kevin, thanks for the call.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. Fair comment. Daryl, hello.
Hey, Todd. How you doing, buddy?
I'm well, you?
Not too bad, man. A little tired today, but, you know, still waiting. But as far as the election goes, I guess I'm kind of agreeing with Kevin. I mean, there's a lot of, holy smokes, it's more hype than I've ever heard. Like, the insults that I'm getting today, you know, losing friends and stuff and on just over an election.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. And that's the American-style politics that I think everybody was worried about was going to happen here. And I think it's happened. And now we've got like two major parties that are fighting against each other and nobody in the middle.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's the visceral reaction is palpable. And
it's intense.
It really is. And that's partly why I'm not on social media anymore, quite seriously.
Yeah, I think I'm going to find my way to the dog park and get off social media for a while.
Yeah, it's not worth the headache. I get it that social media is great for marketing and it's got its upside, but to me it's not worth the other things that come with it.
No, you're right. It wears on you after a while.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me in, bud.
Okay, pal. Take care. Jim, hello.
Hey, Todd.
Hi there.
I just had a quick comment. I don't believe the Liberals won this election. I believe the Conservatives lost it.
Well,
they
that's a
didn't
good point.
they didn't even give us their platform until a week before the election. And the messaging was so negative the whole time. They literally lost this election.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, Jim. I really do. I think that's a fair comment. Thanks for the call.
Bye.
All right. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow between noon and 1. And I'm sure that some of you will have more to say about all of this, and we'll continue to react to it. And it should be interesting to see what the cabinet looks like and how long this minority government lasts and how Carney approaches the U.S. and Donald Trump. It'll be interesting times for sure. But thanks for the calls. We appreciate it. And as always, thanks to Vanessa Van Ness on the other side of the glass, the control board's doing a fine job. As always, we're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.